I will be discussing about the hepatitis E in pregnancy, the recent trends and scenario. So in next 30 minutes or so, I will try to cover the basic understanding of hepatitis E, the structure, genotypes and diagnosis, then coming on to the main topic, the clinical aspects of hepatitis E virus in pregnant women, how it behaves, and pathophysiology, the factors responsible for the different phenotypes of hepatitis E infection in pregnancy, and the management and the preventive options. So as per the global trends, annually there are around 20 million hepatitis E infections worldwide. Out of them, 3.4 million are acute viral hepatitis, and there are 70,000 deaths per year, mainly due to acute liver failure, hepatitis E related. And in the endemic areas, including India, Asia, and Africa, around 50 to 70% of acute viral hepatitis are attributed to hepatitis E, both in the epidemic setting as well as in the sporadic setting. And India, as reported in 2018, India out of all countries have the highest disability adjusted life years attributed to hepatitis E. So the hepatitis E virus itself has two forms. Classically it is the naked hepatitis E virus virion, which do not contains any envelope, and it contains a capsid and the viral genome. And there is another species which is quasi-species hepatitis E virus virion, which contains the quasi-envelope. So the more recent concept is that the naked hepatitis E virion infect the intestinal cell, and intestinal cell has been found to be a reservoir for hepatitis E virus, and the virus do amplify in the enterocytes. From the enterocytes, there is an envelopization of the virus, and then the virus may either from the enterocyte through the apical membrane come back into the intestinal lumen, or it may go into the liver. So the quasi-envelopization of the virus is important because it prevents the destruction of the virus from the neutralizing antibody present in the blood. So in the blood, it is always in the quasi-enveloped form, and the intestine in the feces, it is always in the naked HEV virion. Sorry. So once it comes into the blood through the portal circulation, it reaches to the liver, and it tries to preferentially reach the liver through the basolateral surface of the hepatocytes. And in the hepatocytes, it replicates, and it is egressed from the apical membrane in the encapsulated quasi-enveloped form. By the impact of the bile salts as well as the pancreatic enzymes and the proteolytic enzymes, the envelope is lost, and the infective naked HEV virion, which is passed into the feces and infect the other person. So the viral genome, the hepatitis E viral genome contains the single stranded positive sense RNA, and it contains the non-coding areas 5' region as well as the 3' region, which are non-coding areas, and the central coding areas, which contains the 3 open reading fragments. What is interesting is that in the genotype 1 there are 4 ORF, in the other genotypes there are 3 ORFs. And the ORF1 is the important, it contains the it encodes the 1700 amino acid long non-structural protein, which is important for the viral replications, and it has many functional domains like the methyltransferase, the cysteine proteinase, helicase, and RNA-dependent RNA polymerase. The ORF1-2 is of interest for other further discussion because it contains the structural proteins, and it encodes the capsid protein, and it contains the 3 functional domains. The proteolytic domain is the largest, and it contains the epitope for the neutralizing antibodies. So the ORF2 is important because it contains the epitope for the neutralizing antibodies, as well as it is a binding to the receptors on the hepatocyte surface, and the vaccine development, it is important. So the major vaccine are against the ORF2, and the neutralizing antibodies like the IgM anti-HEV is against the ORF2. So the hepatitis E virus genotype, it contains 8 genotypes. So the human for only genotype 1 to 4 affect the human, others do not affect the human, and all these human infected genotypes belong to the Orthohipiviridae genus and species A. So there are distinct clinical and epidemiological characteristics of genotype 1 and 2 versus genotype 3 and 4. And genotype 1 and 2 is mainly found in the developing countries including Asia and Africa, and it only affects the human. and it is transmitted by the contaminated water, sewage, leaked pipelines, and large outbreaks. It is seen both in epidemic setting as well as the sporadic settings, and usually it presents with the acute self-limiting acute viral hepatitis, which generally resolved on their own, and it is never found to have any chronic infection. But what is peculiar that has got high mortality in the pregnant woman. Genotype 3 and 4 is mainly seen in the as a zoonotic infection and causing opportunistic infection in the human, and it is mainly transmitted through the uncooked pork meat, and it is mainly seen in the Europe and the USA, and it is seen in the immunosuppressed individuals post-transplantation, BMT, and HIV positive patients. And what is peculiar is that in genotype 3 and 4, there is high risk of chronic hepatitis E infection. Almost 60% develop chronic HIV infection. And if untreated, then 10% of these patients develop cirrhosis within 3 years. So these patients develop rapid cirrhosis, but in India, we see only genotype 1 and genotype 2. So coming on the last slide on the basic understanding, how to diagnose and evaluate a patient with symptomatic HIV genotype 1 infection. So once there is exposure, there are 3 phases. First is the incubation period, which varies from 2 to 6 weeks. Then there is a symptomatic period. Symptomatic period is divided into the prodromal features, which generally last for 3 to 4 days, followed by the clinical symptoms. As per the epidemiological studies, only 20% of the patients with HIV infection develop symptoms. And some of the patients have the prolonged pruritus and cholestasis, which so that the symptomatic phase may prolong for a few weeks to months, but these patients also generally have a good outcome. So followed by the convalescent period and the recovery. So the first test to detect the virus in the diagnosis of the hepatitis E infection is the presence of the HIV RNA in the serum as well as stools, which lasts for 4 to 6 weeks. But the HIV RNA is not available everywhere. It is cumbersome, it is expensive, and the report usually comes late. So the capsid antigen is much cheaper, and it is also found to have a good sensitivity and specificity to diagnose the early phases of acute HIV infection. Then the IgM anti-HIV antibodies in the late incubation or the early symptomatic period, the IgM anti-HIV antibodies are formed, which usually last for 6 to 9 months, and it is a hallmark for acute HIV infection. But till now, there is no test available which has the very good sensitivity and specificity to diagnose the HIV infection by IgM anti-HIV antibodies. So some has recommended to add on the IgM HIV antibodies to better diagnose with good sensitivity and specificity the acute HIV infection. And moreover, in a patient with acute liver failure, more severe acute hepatitis, there are higher titers of the HIV as well as IgM anti-HIV as well as the IgG anti-HIV antibodies in patients with more severe liver disease. So in patients after the IgM anti-HIV antibodies, then the IgG antibodies are formed. But unlike the patients with acute HIV infection, the IgG antibodies are not that much durable. The titers tend to decline after 1 to 2 years, and the studies have shown that after 10 to 14 years, almost only 50% of the patients have the IgG positivity, which may lead to the increased risk of reinfection if the titers are below 2.5 WHO units. What was peculiar is that the vaccine-induced antibodies, if we give the HIV vaccine, the antibodies are more durable. The studies have shown that after the 5 years, the 94% still have the IgG antibody after vaccination. So coming on to the main topic, the clinical aspects of the acute the HIV infection in the pregnant woman. So there are salient features. The HIV causes the high attack rate in the females who are pregnant. So there is more susceptibility of HIV infection in the pregnancy. The acute viral hepatitis due to HIV is the most common form of acute viral hepatitis in pregnant women. And they tend to be more symptomatic, more higher conversion to acute liver failure. Then the most of the ALFs are known to be occurring in the 3rd trimester of the pregnancy, and with a very high case fatality rate. higher fetal and neonatal complications and mortality, and higher rates of vertical transmission. Most of the transmission occur in the intrauterine period, unlike the hepatitis B, where most of the transmission occurs during the childbirth. So there is no specific medical treatment currently approved for the management of HIV infection in pregnant women. So this was the initial prospective field study for the evaluation of the epidemic of non-A, non-B hepatitis, which was later determined to be having suspected HIV infection. This study was done in Kashmir by Dr. Khuru et al., and they have shown that the pregnant women in the epidemic has the higher attack rates. Almost 17% of the women with acute hepatitis viral infection were pregnant women. And moreover, most of these only pregnant women developed acute liver failure, while the non-pregnant women, none developed acute liver failure. And the peculiar feature was that the most of the acute liver failure was seen in the third trimester of the pregnancy, but there was no acute liver failure in the first and second trimester. So this was the early study which provoked the further investigation and was shown to have the higher preponderance of the severe disease in the pregnant woman. So in the non-pregnant setting, as I said earlier, the 20% develop symptomatic infection, and acute liver failure is very uncommon occurrence. But in a pregnant woman who developed acute viral hepatitis in pregnancy, the rates of developing acute liver failure are quite high. Almost 30 to 60% of the patients who developed acute viral hepatitis in pregnancy developed acute liver failure, even in the sporadic settings. And the 50%, the multiple studies, the meta-analysis of the studies have shown that the 50% all over in the world of the acute viral hepatitis in pregnancy are attributed to hepatitis E infection. The landmark study from Professor Sareen from J.B. Pant and Lady Hardinge Institute have shown that the development of fulminant hepatic failure in a patient with acute viral hepatitis in pregnancy, if the HIV is positive, then the risk is much higher, 2.7-fold higher risk of fulminant hepatic failure. So is it possible, can we predict the acute liver failure in a pregnant woman who developed acute viral hepatitis in pregnancy? The study from Professor Carr have shown that the patients with acute liver failure in pregnancy, as compared to those who do not develop acute liver failure, at baseline they have the higher viral load, the HIV RNA was higher, and the chances of having the positive HIV RNA is more. So in patients with AVH in pregnancy, if the viral load is high, we should carefully suspect and carefully look and follow up for the development of acute liver failure in them. And moreover, the microRNA studies have the microRNA 450B in AVH in pregnancy have been recently shown to develop to have the good sensitivity and specificity to diagnose the ALF in pregnant women. So how the ALF in HIV-related ALF is different in pregnant versus non-pregnant women. This was the study, 3 years prospective study of the evaluation of sporadic acute viral hepatitis E. The 47 pregnant women versus 34 non-pregnant ALF-E were compared, and it was shown that the ALF in pregnancy HIV-related has shorter duration of pre-encephalopathy period. Jaundice to encephalopathy is much shorter. They usually present as hyperacute liver failure as compared to acute liver failure in non-pregnant women. More cerebral edema, more DIC. The ORF3 protein interact with the fibrinogen, so it lead to decreased generation of the fibrinogen and lead to more DIC, lesser systemic infection, and similar mortality. This was based on the study which was done by Professor Khuru in 2003. So none of the patient I could find in the literature where the HIV-related ALF in pregnancy had got liver biopsy, but the postmortem biopsy was done, and they have shown that in a fatal acute liver failure HIV-related, there is lot of hepatocyte necrosis, so almost parenchymal collapse, lot of hepatocyte loss, and there is no zonal distribution. It occurs in all zone 1 to 3. There is lot of canalicular cholestasis and rosette formation, pseudoglandular formation, and as well as the lot of inflammation. And how to differentiate the HEV-related ALF versus hepatitis B-related ALF? This study have shown that the lot of interface activity is noted in the HBV-related ALF as compared to HEV-related ALF, and this was one of the differentiating points in the two. So regarding the case fatality in a woman who is pregnant and have HIV infection, this is meta-analysis of the 47 studies. Almost all of the patients who die are having acute liver failure, and the third trimester, most of the case mortality is in the third trimester because most of the ALF occur in the third trimester, and there was no difference in the epidemic as well as the sporadic settings in the terms of the case fatality. Most of the studies from the North India have shown higher mortality as compared to the South Indian studies. This is probably proposed due to the presence of genotype 1A in the Northern India, which is more virulent as compared to the genotype 1B in the South India. So, but is it really so? Not all studies have the similar results. This is the study from Dr. Vikram from AIIMS. They have studied the 100,015 consecutive ALF patients in the reproductive age group, and they have shown that although the hepatitis E virus has the higher attack rates, the 30% in the non-pregnant women and 60% in the pregnant women, the percentage of HEV ALF, but the mortality was similar in the pregnant as well as non-pregnant women as well as men, and it was independent of the trimester of the pregnancy. So this study showed that although the attack rates were higher, but since the ALF per se is too severe, so these patients tend to die, and there's no difference in pregnant versus non-pregnant women. Now coming on to the mother-to-child transmission of hepatitis E virus, the studies have shown the higher rates of HEV transmission from mother to baby, and it is mainly the intrauterine transmission, and one of the major predictor of the transmission to baby from mother is the presence of the high HEV RNA titers levels in the mother. The study have shown that the cutoff more than 13,000 had good sensitivity and specificity to predict the development of acute HEV infection in the neonates. So the HEV infection in pregnancy has a lot of maternal and fetal complications due to ALF per se, as well as the obstetric complication due to in the mother there is a high chances of premature rupture of the membrane, 28%. There is high chances of postpartum hemorrhage due to severe coagulopathy, 14%. And in the fetus, there is a high chances, almost 60 to 90% of the preterm have the preterm delivery, and the low birth weight baby, almost fourfold higher chances. So pregnancy, the HEV in pregnancy is associated with the neonatal and the fetal case fatality rate. The systemic review has shown that the median fetal mortality is 33%. Most of the deaths are due to IUD or stillbirth. Median neonatal mortality was 8%, and most of the mortality is due to prematurity, neurological complications, acute hepatitis, and some of the reports of the neonatal ALF due to HEV infection. And stillbirth in 2,400 to 3,000 per year, which is linked with the antenatal maternal deaths. So how these sequence of events occur in the pregnant woman, unlike the other hepatotropic viruses. In hepatitis B, we are more concerned about the mother-to-child transmission, but here we are more concerned not only with that, but also the maternal outcomes due to acute liver failure. So how does this occur? So in the pregnancy, there is a progressive increase in the estrogen as well as progesterone in the pregnancy. Mostly it is in the very higher levels in the late pregnancy. So the dominant Th1 response, which is seen in the early pregnancy, tend to be which is pro-inflammatory, tend to be superseded by the anti-inflammatory response, Th2 mediated. So in a pregnancy, there is a immunosuppression, there is a immunotolerance in the later pregnancy, so which prevents the rejection of the baby and cause the fetal tolerance. And there is an increased upregulation of the regulatory T cells. Moreover, the trophoblast do not contain the MHC, so the T cells will not bind to the trophoblast and does not cause the injury. And the NK cells, although the trophoblast secrete the special type of HLA, HLA-G, so which secretes the CD16 and CD56, which inactivates the NK cells. So the NK cell and T cell injury does not occur in the normal pregnancy and cause the fetal tolerance. So the high progesterone in the later pregnancy causes the binds to the progesterone receptors, causing the increased expression of the progesterone receptors, and thereby increase the secretion of the progesterone-inducing blocking factor. So this is very important. The progesterone-induced blocking factor is an anti-aborticidal agent, and it prevents the fetal loss. So it decreases the NK cell activity, and it changes the phenotype from Th1 to Th2 phenotype. So what happens in the fulminant hepatic failure? There is a down regulation of the progesterone receptor expression due to the mutations in the progesterone receptor gene, progene's mutation, which lead to the down regulation, decreased PIBF, progesterone inducing blocking factor, which so that the NK cell function will be more, there will be more Th1 response, more pro-inflammatory response, and more fetal deaths. Moreover, the estrogen has been shown to be higher in the pregnant woman in pregnancy with HEV as compared to the non-HEV pregnant woman. And the high estrogen has been shown to facilitate the HEV replication by inhibiting the PI3K AKT signaling pathway. Moreover, the study from the ILBS have shown that in self-limiting illness, the monocytes are potent enough to clear the hepatitis E virus, but in the presence of the acute liver failure, there is a monocyte dysfunction due to decreased defective TLR signaling, thereby the no phagocytosis, so the virus will, so more severe liver injury and deaths. So these were about the host factor which promote the viral, development of severe liver disease in the pregnant woman. But the viral factors, the studies have shown that the virus do not only replicate in the liver but also in the extrahepatic site. So in the placenta also there is an increased HEV replication, more with HEV1 which we see here, but in HEV3. And the higher replications of the virus in the placenta have shown to decrease the interferon 3 production. Moreover, with the increasing replication of the virus in the placenta, there is an increased production of the IL-6, CCL3, CCL4, and decreased production of the CCL10, which lead to increased tissue necrosis and promotes the tissue damage in the duodenal decidual explants. Moreover, because we see a lot of rapid replication in the HEV-related ALFs, so in pregnancy, so error-prone replication lead to selection of selective mutations like the ORF1 gene mutations, which have been shown in multiple settings to associated with the acute liver failure as well as the vaccine escape. So coming on to the management. So HEV, acute viral hepatitis in pregnancy, is mostly self-limiting, although not almost 30 to 40% there is risk of developing acute liver failure. We should be more vigilant for the evidence of liver failure like the development of encephalopathy, INR. We should look for the subtle signs like sleepiness and coagulopathy. And the HEV ALF, the intensive care is same as to any other ALF, but there are case reports of successful liver transplantation in pregnancy. In these case reports, what they have done mostly is the successful LSCS followed by hemodynamic stabilization followed by the liver transplantation. Unlike the AFLP, there is no rationale for active termination of the pregnancy in HEV endemic area with the hope of improving the outcome of the patient. So there are multiple drugs available for HEV, but none is approved in pregnancy setting. The ribavirin is the gold standard for chronic HEV infection, but it is characterized as category X. And the sofosbuvir is a NS5B inhibitor, so it is a category B drug, which is also not safe in the pregnant woman. But there is a ribavirin pregnancy registry which have shown the interim analysis of the use of ribavirin in the pregnant woman. They have shown that the birth defects is 8.2% and the who are indirectly exposed it is 4.2%. So most of the ALFs in HEV in pregnant women occur in the third trimester. So most of the risk of teratogenicity is in the first trimester. So if we have no other option, so ribavirin, although it is not recommended, it is considered a category X drug, but in case of no other option when the patient dying, so maybe ribavirin may be a last resort. And the sofosbuvir, although it is not recommended in pregnant women, but the most recent studies have shown that the sofosbuvir is safe in pregnant women, and the drug exposure to the baby in pregnant versus non-pregnant women is same. And moreover, the sofosbuvir is quite effective in terms of the decreasing the HEV replication in the decreasing the HEV replication. And the animal studies have shown that the combination of sofosbuvir and ribavirin in genotype 1 also, the JAK3 placenta, so have shown that it decreases the viral replication. So the prevention is the most important because we have no major treatment options. So improvement in the sanitary conditions, clean drinking water, proper sewage disposal, and public education awareness of the hygiene is most important. HEV can be easily killed by the boiling water 100 degrees Celsius as well as chlorination of the water. Immunoglobulin, the initial studies have shown the no promising results with the immunoglobulin. And the breastfeeding is safe in the developing countries. There is low level of the HEV RNA in the colostrum, which is hardly have any major effect on the baby. But it is recommended to avoid in a patient with severe acute hepatitis at the time of delivery. So what can be done for prevention is the HEV vaccination. Although it is currently approved only in the China, this study which was published in Lancet 2010, almost 40 pregnant women were inadvertently given the vaccination, and they have shown that the adverse effect in pregnant women was matched with the non-pregnant women, and it has 100% efficacy. 3 doses of the vaccination, 0, 1 and 6. And this was the phase 3 trial, and for China it is approved even in the HEV infection in the pregnant women. So what more we can do? We are living in an endemic area where there is a high risk of contracting the HEV infection, especially in the child group, in the 25 to 50 years of female, so reproductive age group female. So there is a preemptive HEV vaccination. The trial is ongoing in the Bangladesh. They have shown given vaccination to all of them, and the more modeling studies have shown that this may be cost effective in preventing the HEV outcome in the pregnant woman. So coming on to the IL-based data, the Excel I got from the Ankit. So from that it was derived. The ALF in pregnancy was 17. The HEV related ALF in pregnancy was 11. The non-HEV related ALF was 6. One was HBV, one was HAV, 2 was autoimmune, and 2 were daily. And the HEV related acute viral hepatitis were 4. So the in this analysis, the non-HEV ALF have 83% mortality, only 1 survived, but HEV ALF, the 4 died and 7 survived. The HEV ALF were younger as compared to non-HEV ALF, a low ALT value, but considering these low numbers, the data may be skewed, and there were a lot of adverse outcomes, 2 IUD, 2 stillbirth, 2 MTP. It depends on the which trimester the baby is, the infection occurs. So to summarize my talk, the HEV infection has the high risk of acute liver failures and adverse maternal and fetal outcomes. No vaccine is currently available. We should focus more on the preventive measures. And the multidisciplinary approach with the close collaboration of the obstetrician, hepatologist, and if need arise, the liver transplant surgeon is the priority. Thank you for the kind attention.